Hello, welcome to Designing with Color Theory by Jacqueline Ketchum. So, color theory, we all know it, we all love it, it's pretty easy, right? Red means stop, green means go. Put it together, that means Christmas, right? Well, actually, it can get a lot more complicated. I originally wanted to do this talk about color theory and design across cultures. However, as I started to look into it, I realized that was really too much for me to even get into in the scope of this project. Something I realized is before we can talk about designing with color in different cultures, you have to ask yourself, are you even proficient in color design in your own culture? Let's look at an example. I was curious about how accurate common color theory advice is. If you Google color theory chart or color theory meanings for any culture, you get a zillion results. One of which is this. Not to pick on this specific chart, but it's just a good example of what I'm talking about. When you look up color meanings, you most often get information that says one color equals a handful of precise, separate, concrete meanings. And the most important thing with articles or advice like that is that it's lacking nuance. I decided to test this chart for myself and worked with 5 classmates to see if the way they felt for the prescribed Western culture meanings matched up with those displayed here. The results were interesting. I had some in-depth conversations with people about their thoughts on the color meanings you saw assigned in the last slide, so this is just a sampling of responses. I conducted this test using the colors purple and gold as examples. Gold was easy. Everyone agreed that it meant money. Yay! Purple was very complicated. Some meanings resonated with people, such as purple for beauty or decadence. Some really didn't resonate with anyone, such as purple for virtue. One person pointed out the contradiction in meanings. How could they say that purple means both modesty and flamboyance? Aren't those opposite? You can see how this gets complicated really quickly. However, even with gold, which I just said was the simple one, while everyone could agree that it meant money like it says on the chart, almost everyone also agreed that the chart was missing some important meanings such as high quality or achievement, for example. So even the easy color has more complicated associations. In addition, as you can see, the importance of shade came up more than once. To realize how important this is, consider the color red. A light enough shade of red becomes pink, which at that point essentially becomes a whole different color to us. The difference between a pale lavender and deep purple can be huge. You can see where the issue of shade gets more complicated really quickly. But this is just the results of my little test. Now let's look at a real-world example of color theory that was used not so great. So this says that a local children's hospital recently redecorated, and they're not too sure if they really thought things out. So if you're familiar with this image, you've probably seen it floating around the internet for many years, and you've also seen what people have to say about it. Famously, some people have defended this design choice, saying that red has many positive meanings in Western cultures, such as passion, strength, and willpower. They cite common color theory, which, as I said, we're all pretty familiar with. However, my favorite user commented this. You can theorize to Nebraska and back, but that doesn't change my immediate reaction, which is that someone is literally dragging a corpse around. This quote, this example, basically could have been my entire presentation. So let's look at this again. Most people can agree that this looks pretty bad, right? And how can a mistake like this happen? How can it be avoided? The solution is actually really simple, testing. If they had done a mock-up of this design and tested it with even a handful of people, they would have realized the issue almost immediately, and they could have either adjusted the color or the pattern. This would have been a super easy fix. Color theory is an okay place to start, but as that internet user so beautifully reminds us, reality is always going to trump theory. Context is always going to be essential when it comes to designing with color. So, these are conclusions and advice that I would really like you to take away from this talk. Small changes can make a big difference. Like we said, something as simple as changing the color a few shades lighter or darker can really transform your audience's reaction. Context is crucial. It's been documented by experts that variables like age, sex, and culture are thought to influence emotional and behavioral reactions to color. The context of your documents and their audience will always be important. Unfortunately, individuals will always be individual. And what I mean by this is everyone will have their own personal thoughts and feelings about color. For instance, one person I tested with said that gold immediately makes them think of Minecraft. That's just not really something you can design for. So don't be surprised or discouraged if your color-based designs don't work for everyone. And I said a lot about traditional color theory so far. While it is true that research on the effects of color on emotion is inconclusive, don't throw it all away. Traditional color theory can still be a really good starting point, but then you just have to work from there. And finally, the most important advice, always test. Like we said before, the macabre children's hospital floor could have easily been avoided with just one round of testing. Testing is quick, easy, and it works. Test things with your audience to make sure that your colors are doing what you want. And finally, if you'd like to look at color theory across cultures, the principles are pretty much the same. Don't take anything for granted and test with your audience. So that would specifically be testing with members of the culture that you're trying to design for. Realize that you will likely not be able to create one document that is fluent across multiple cultures. Instead, prepare to make different versions of your materials for different audiences. In addition to color, other elements of your design will likely have to change, such as images or icons that we might consider to be universal but do not translate to other languages or cultures. I would especially recommend the Russo and Bohr piece because it is short, easy to read, and has an interesting case study for design across cultures. And of course, a big thank you to all of my friends who helped me test for this project and to Dr. Dilger for teaching this class.